Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome to the bonus show. David, have you been to Helsinki? I don't think you have.
I have not been to Helsinki in Finland.
I have never been to Helsinki either. But I have a story here about some interesting methods of cooling its buildings. You're probably thinking, well, why is cooling such a big deal in Helsinki? Scandinavian countries don't usually have summers like we have here in Texas. And that's true. I'm not sure. I don't know why this is a big deal here. You would think heating would be more of a priority. But it's still interesting, and it's still saving them money and lowering their carbon footprint. What they did is basically they're using water. They're kind of drilling out underground lakes and using water to cool their buildings and other areas. And it's a pretty solid idea. Of course, it still does. There is still a carbon footprint here, but it's just much smaller than the alternative, than the air conditioners and the energy you need to power those, and where is that coming from, and all that. So of course, many cities harvest geothermal heat, like Iceland. Something like 80% of Iceland is powered by one geothermal plant, which is amazing. And their system utilizes just cold lake water, which already surrounds the city. They made this tank, as they call it, they blasted it out about 100 yards below a park. The park is 100 yards long and can hold up to 9 million gallons of cold water, which is pumped out into the city during the day to cool the city at its hottest and most active hours. The water then returns to the tank at night to cool for the next day. Pretty interesting methods of cooling here. Of course, maybe not a solution to places that aren't surrounded by water in the first place.
No, but it's very interesting. And the thing is, in the U.S., as we talked about pretty recently with regard to the sea level rise, because of shipping reasons, historically, a lot of the big cities are on the coast, or like Chicago on Lake Michigan, near bodies of water. So yeah, not every place is near water, but a lot of the bigger cities in the U.S. certainly are.
Helsinki's solution is smart because it allows buildings and organizations to share resources at the city scale instead of mandating renewable cooling methods building by building and requiring that developers pay extra money to execute them. The city is providing the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a big thing in New York, because going forward, you have certain building codes are updated. New York is a place that now has a high population density. When you do work on buildings, certain buildings can be grandfathered into older regulations if you don't change certain things. Other times, for new construction, the regulations are drastically different than for buildings from the 30s and 40s, for example. And it's just a nightmare when it comes to infrastructure, what am I trying to say? In terms of the guidelines for how buildings are built and what needs to be done. And it's hard to imagine anything umbrella that would apply to both the old and new buildings equally. A lot of the new ideas would take a lot more money to implement in older buildings.
That is true. But of course, New York does have the water if they wanted to use it. They're more worried about, right now, they're more worried about that water level rising, I think. But maybe there is, maybe in solving that problem, you can solve another problem too. Who knows? I have no doubt that it will be insanely expensive no matter what happens there. But they're estimating here in Helsinki that there's about 80% less carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases being emitted here using this method over other methods, and that it's about 5 times as efficient as building specific cooling systems. Pretty interesting. Good for them. I have a story here on some knives. You know how you always see these knives that are like kitchen knives that are for sale that people claim, oh, you never have to sharpen these. They stay sharp forever.
Yeah.
And they just look like normal knives. They're made out of normal stuff. But I was checking out Gizmodo, And there are these knives that look like they're modeled after stealth bombers. They don't look that. The handles don't look very ergonomical or ergonomic. Do I put the AL on the end?
I think it's just ergonomic.
Okay. They look pretty badass. But I guess you will actually only need to sharpen them about every 25 years. And they're not that expensive considering. It's about $138 for their most expensive knife and about $78 for the paring knife. Would you say that's outrageous for a knife that you never need to sharpen?
You know, I'm not really up to speed on knife prices, so I'm not really the right person to weigh in on this. The knives I have, I bought a while ago, and I know that they were cheap knives, so I don't even remember what they cost. So I guess if you never have to sharpen it again, maybe that's worth it, or 25 years. I don't know. I mean, I'm the wrong person to comment on this. It sounds like a lot, $78 for a paring knife. I mean, by the time you get a whole set of what you need, you could be talking $1,000 or more dollars.
If I were to buy these knives, I guess I would just buy one of the bigger knives and one of the paring knives. Since I'm not cooking all the time and don't need these ultra specific knives, I have one knife right now that I do all my cutting with.
See, how is that possible? Because, certain foods you need a serrated knife, and certain foods you really don't want a serrated knife.
Well, need is not really the word. It might be easier with a serrated knife.
Well, for example, if you try to cut a tomato with a knife that you can't really easily get through the skin unless you stick it into the side and then kind of cut down, you're going to kind of ruin your tomatoes,
Well, I'm not making sandwiches with or salads with big slices of tomatoes. I will admit that yes, when I cut tomatoes, it's a disaster. But since I'm usually just throwing them in a pot and they get broken up and cooked down anyway, it's not a problem.
Gotcha.
So yes, I have one knife, and it's some cheap knife. It's held up pretty well. It was one of the more expensive knives Target had, but Target doesn't have very expensive knives.
There you go.
I've had it for a year. It probably needs to be sharpened. I haven't sharpened it yet, but these would be a bit better. Anyway, laser bonded titanium carbide surfaces is what makes these so good.
Love carbide.
You gotta love carbide. Laser bonded titanium carbide, even better. Anyway, I think they're pretty interesting. I guess the company is, let me try and find the name of the company here. You can get them at A+R store. TB Group is the the company that it's just letters. It's all letters. TB Group are the ones that designed it, but they're for sale at A+R store.
Got it.
And that's just an A, the word plus, and then an R, and then store. Will I be buying them? No. But if I were to buy knives, I would probably get these. All right. I have a beer review. And I guess I'm not going to drink this beer again, and I'll explain why. But some people out there might really love it. I saw these beers with this weird labeling pop up recently in a store. Some of them looked really good, and this one just sounded really interesting. The brewery is a brewery in Denmark called TOOL. I think those are two separate words. I'm not really sure how you pronounce it, but it looks like tool, but it's two words, TOOL. And one of the O's has that line through it. Do you know what that's called?
I'm not exactly sure. No, I'm not up to speed on that.
The brewery is in Denmark, but the beer says product of Belgium. I'm not sure why. Maybe they just have some split thing going on here. And what this is, it's called Nordic by Nature. Excuse me. India Pale Ale, something I don't normally drink, brewed with juniper berry juice and sea buckthorn juice.
Love buckthorn.
Sea buckthorn is something I only recently discovered. It's a Nordic native to the Nordic regions, and it tastes like jackfruit. If you've ever had jackfruit, I think that's the only thing I can compare it to. I had a vodka that was infused with it recently, and that's how I found out about it. Can't really buy it in the stores around here. So this sounded really interesting to me. So I bought it. This has to be, I'm not sure how juniper berry juice would affect the bitterness of something, but this has to be the most bitter beer I've ever had in my life. And I've had some crazy IPAs, and I just don't like bitter beer. This was very hard for me to drink. It was here in Austin, everybody loves IPAs, and there's a lot of very hoppy beers, and the companies try to promote the hell out of how hoppy their beers actually are. I think this is one of the most bitter and one of the most hoppy beers I've ever had, maybe the most ever. But they don't really promote it that way. I don't know why. Maybe it's not as big a deal. But if you are a hophead, you would probably love this. It's only 6.5%, a little bit high, but considering how bitter and hoppy it is, I'm used to beers being a bit stronger.
So personally, it's not your thing, but you recognize that this is like a quality beer.
It's a quality beer. Yeah, I would recommend it only for the most hardcore hopheads. You can taste the sea buckthorn. It is noticeable, and it adds an interesting flavor.
Does it have? It doesn't have rose hips and sea buckthorn, does it?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not. So yes, it's. I guess it's a pretty solid IPA if you're into that. Will I buy it again? No. Will I try other beers from this company? Probably. They had a kind of a lot of different types of beers.
So just tell us once more the company and the name of the beer for everybody who is interested.
Well, since I don't know how to pronounce the name of the brewery, it's TOOL, but the beer is called Nordic by Nature. That should be easy to remember.
Yeah.
Just think Naughty by Nature. That's pretty much it. Brutally hoppy and bitter. Too much for me.
Thank you.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.